I'm just so impressed, but I've always been impressed by Flint. The first time I came here was last year. When I heard about this conference last year, I immediately went online, bought myself a plane ticket, and said, I got to check this out. I'm a pretty cheap guy. I don't pay for very much. I paid for that ticket and came here. That was last year. I've now been here 5 times in the past year. Flint is a very cool place. I mean, I've run the Crim. I've eaten literally everything in the farmer's market twice. I've been over to talk at Diplomat. I was over at the Red Wagon last night, probably eating and drinking more than I should have. I really love it here, guys. If you don't know what you have here, you need to take a look around and really appreciate what a great place Flint really is. So, that being said, I want to kind of put you on the spot a little bit because one of the things I have been immersed in for the past couple of years is what a hero really is. It's a kind of a weird thing because if you ask people to define what a hero is, they start using kind of vague words like, well, someone who's brave or someone who's strong. And the least helpful people of all are the actual heroes. If you ever watch television and some guy had just raced into a burning apartment building and ran up to the 5th floor and saved someone's kitten and came running down through the smoke and brought the cat outside and people are weeping and grateful, and the news camera puts the microphone in front of him, and I guarantee you that person, no matter how old they are, no matter what gender they are, they will always say the exact same thing. I don't consider myself a hero. Well, dude, you just ran through a burning building. If that doesn't qualify, then what does? But I think what happens is we become so detached from what that word means that even heroes themselves are a little confused about what exactly it is. You know, is it because they're brave? Is it because they're strong? Is it because they're actually reckless and probably shouldn't be allowed in polite society after all? Like, what exactly is going on with heroes? So I spent a few years examining this topic, and basically, to me, it boils down to 2 things. And this is what we're going to do today during the entire day, and it's going to put you in a kind of an uncomfortable spot because you're going to have to ask yourselves which one of these 2 people you are. Know what to do, don't have a clue. If there's a crisis, do you know what to do, or you don't have a clue? Now, I've given myself a lot of thought, and I put myself in one of those 2 categories. I'm going to tell you what it is in just a little bit, but let me tell you first how I got to this realization. This idea of know what to do, don't have a clue. World War II, when Hitler began his invasion of Western Europe. Okay, I know you guys came here for fun today, but here's your history lesson. It will only take 45 seconds. When Hitler began his invasion during World War II, every single country and army in Western Europe had spent the previous 30 years devoting themselves to one thing and one thing only, keeping all the Germans in Germany. They saw what the Germans can do, and so all the armies in France and Luxembourg and Belgium and Great Britain, all they were devoting themselves to do for 30 years is just the next time the Germans start their nonsense, we're going to be ready and we're going to stop them before they create too much damage. So Hitler starts his invasion. All of Western Europe is ready for him. They're ready to stop him. And they do a great job for like 15 minutes. And then he destroys every single army, 9 armies in a row in a matter of months. It's kind of crazy. I mean, we have wars in Afghanistan and Iraq that we can't stop. And yet Hitler is able to destroy every major army in Western Europe in literally a matter of months. Until he comes to one place, and it's the last place you would expect. It wasn't Great Britain with its amazing Air Force and Navy. It wasn't France with all of its brave fighting men. It was actually a little island in the middle of the Mediterranean called Crete. Crete is a tiny place. I have walked back and forth across Crete several times. It is a small place. It is a tiny little island surrounded by water. Crete didn't even have its own army at the time. All of the soldiers and fighting men of Crete had been moved to the mainland to try to stop the Germans there. So if you're on Crete, you're a shepherd, you're a farmer, you're a shopkeeper, you're an old person. You're just a normal civilian on an island. And if you're one of those shepherds on a morning in April in the 1940s, you're in there making your morning oatmeal, and all of a sudden you notice it's getting kind of cloudy outside. You pull aside the curtains and you look outside, and what you see coming down on top of you is the largest aerial invasion in military history. 80,000 German paratroopers are dropping from the sky down to your island. Now you're that shepherd and you're making your oatmeal, and you see these guys coming down, and at that moment you got to ask yourself, know what to do? Don't have a clue. Now I'm asking you right now, if I told you there are 80,000 German soldiers now with parachutes right now, I would imagine most of us right now are in category B, right? Don't have a clue. What do? Do you surrender? Do you call somebody to help you? Do you hide in the basement? What do you do when Germans are coming to capture your island? Now the Cretans, for some bizarre reason, were category A. They knew what to do. Crete is the only place in the entire world where the resistance to Hitler began the day the invasion started. Crete is the only place where the entire island was all category A. It was all know what to do. Every other country, once the army was defeated, people kind of backed off and like, well, I don't know, what should we do? Should we collaborate? Should we surrender? What should we do? France, all these other countries, they spent months and months before they organized into a civilian resistance against the Third Reich. Crete, these guys are literally still in their parachutes, dropping to the ground, and that shepherd throws aside the wooden spoon, grabs a butcher knife, and runs out the door to fight. And this happened across the island. Civilians immediately, with no preparation, with no communication, instinctively organized into a resistance army. Hitler had given his generals just one day to capture Crete. And the only reason why he wanted Crete was he was using it as a stepping stone between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. All you need is a little island in the middle of the Mediterranean, place where you can store your weapons and your extra food, and you can rely on it later. He thought there's going to be no resistance on Crete at all, so he gave his generals one day. Get in and out 24 hours, lock this island down. One day goes by, 2 days, 3, 4, 5. These shepherds are still fighting. The greatest army in the world cannot conquer this stinking little rock. It took only 5 days for Hitler to defeat France. 10 days come and go, and these Cretan civilians are still out there holding up the greatest army in the world. It took Hitler's armies 10 days to finally secure the perimeter of this island, but the Cretans didn't give up. They ran up into the mountains, and there they formed their own underground resistance army. So I was asking myself the question, like, why is it throughout the entire world there's only one place where the entire island was in a category of know what to do as opposed to don't have a clue? And I think the reason why is because ancient Greece is a place where this idea of the hero isn't a mystery. It's not something they're confused about at all. If you ask a Greek person from 2,000 years ago to define a hero, he'd be rattling it off an answer like that. Because the Greeks weren't satisfied with kind of hoping that in an emergency, a hero might show up. They're not hoping that the rock happens to be nearby when you need someone to lift a car off your kid. What they decided to do was, look, rather than just like hope and leave it up to chance, why don't we just try and figure out what the basic components of a hero are? And once we know what these components are, let's work them out into a curriculum, have a teaching program, and spread it to everybody in the entire country. And that way, instead of hoping the rock shows up, you'll have a whole room full of rocks. Everybody will be capable of it. So what the Greeks decided was, look, you can't rely on super strength. You can't be like the super ripped, WWE guy, because all of us aren't like that. So maybe strength is different than we thought it was. The second thing was skill. Now, we think of skill as being some kind of arcane art that only a couple people know, but the idea of skill is actually just knowing how to do things in a crisis where you can be more effective. And the last thing was compassion. Because really, what's the point of strength and skill if you don't actually want to do anything? You have to have the compassion to actually reach out and act. So what the ancient Greeks came up with was this idea. The art of the hero is about three things: strength, skill, and compassion. And then they began to study those three skills to find out more and more about them, to come up with a way where it can be transmitted to everybody. So I'm going to take one of those three words, compassion. Now, we all think we know what compassion is, right? It's kind of like, being kind of nice, giving the extra $1 here and there to the guy on the street. We don't really respect compassion very much. We don't really feel comfortable with the word compassion because it's kind of a soft thing. It means you're kind of a pushover. You're kind of vulnerable to people taking advantage of you. But let me tell you a story about something that happened to me that really sort of clicked the light bulb in my mind about what compassion really means and what it definitely meant to the ancient Greeks who perfected this art of the hero. So you guys know The Daily Show with Jon Stewart? Or used to be with Jon Stewart? You guys ever see that show, The Daily Show? all right? So a couple years ago, I was invited on The Daily Show. And if there's anything more nerve-wracking than being here with all these lights in your eyes, it's being invited on international television with the most sarcastic man in the world. So I'm gonna go on The Daily Show, and I'm preparing for this thing like I've never prepared for a test in my life. I'm like writing myself notes and asking friends what kind of stories I should tell and what kind of pants should I think I was actually wearing these pants. Yeah, these are my Daily Show pants. I actually bought these pants that day. I needed something to wear. They held up pretty good. So the moment comes. I'm back in the green room. I'm going to walk out, and I've got everything rehearsed in my mind that I'm going to do. I'm going to shake his hand. I'm going to sit down. I am not going to challenge him because if you say the wrong thing to Jon Stewart, you are dead. But the most important thing I was going to do was, if you've ever seen the end of The Daily Show, he always reaches across after the interview and leans in, and he like whispers in the person's ear. And I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? It's like, is he giving him his cell phone number or something? So I thought, this is my moment. No matter what happens on that stage, at least I'm going to have that little private chat with Jon Stewart at the very end. I'll find out what he actually talks about. So the moment comes, I walk out, and that's the last thing I remember. To this day, I have no idea what actually happened during those 5 minutes. My mind is a blank. I walked out, something happened, we talked, and then I got up and just started walking off. As I'm walking off, the producer's like, no, sit down. I'm like, oh, shit. I forgot to sit there and let him whisper in my ear. And so I tried to go back, and the producer's like, no, you got to go now. Now you got to go. And afterwards, I was disappointed. I never got to have the chat. And I watched the show at night on television, and it was like watching somebody else. It was an out-of-body experience. I had no recollection of the things that I was seeing, the things I'd said and heard and my reactions. It was bizarre. I was watching somebody else. And I asked myself afterwards, what happened there? Like, why was my mind so blanked out? And I think the reason why is because, I've been in a lot of weird situations. I was a war correspondent overseas in Africa for a good number of years. If you've read Born to Run, I got myself into way more trouble than a smarter person would have gotten themselves into. And, so I've been in dangerous situations before, but what was it about that situation that made my brain fritz out? And I think it's because of this. What Jon Stewart has going for him is a quality that makes a lot of us very, very uncomfortable. It is extreme awareness. That's what comedy's all about. It's extreme awareness. Jon Stewart is looking at you, and he's seeing stuff about you that you'd prefer he didn't actually see. That's what makes him so darn funny, because he very quickly can zero in and spot little details, like what you're doing with your hair, and a little spot on your t-shirt, and the way you're moving your hands. What comedy is all about is noticing things that most of the rest of us let fly by. And most of us would prefer to remain a little bit invisible to that kind of X-ray vision. And that's what made me super nervous. This is the one guy I was ever going to sit across from that was going to see things about myself that I really wish he wouldn't see. And that's what caused that extreme nervousness and made it blank out. And that, believe it or not, is what the root of compassion really is. So the ancient Greeks are very practical people. They're like, we're not interested in you guys being soft and nice and vulnerable and giving the extra $1 to the guy on the street. What compassion really is extreme alertness. It's being so aware of everything around you that you can spot a problem in the distance before it becomes your problem. So if you got that third cousin out there that thinks it might be fun to experiment with drug addiction, you want to know what that third cousin's up to before you come home one day and find out that your Lexus is missing from the driveway. The idea of compassion is not being soft and vulnerable, about being super alert and super aware. That was the Greek notion of compassion. The Greek notion of strength, again, very similar. We think of strength as being super big, super strong, super muscular. The Greeks weren't interested in size at all. If you're super big and super muscular, you're usually not very mobile, not very agile, not very nimble. What they wanted for strength was, can you get down and squat very quickly? Can you pull yourself up off the ground? If one of you had to climb up on this balcony, could you do it? The ancient Greeks could. Their idea of strength is not what you look like, it's what you can do. It's functional strength. Same thing with skill. When we think about skills, like can you throw a football 60 yards in a tight spiral? That's kind of cool. But the fact of the matter is throwing a football 60 yards in a tight spiral really doesn't do you any good except for playing football. Is your skill something which can be applied to normal everyday life? Things which will actually help other people out. So that's what the ancient Greeks did. They developed this idea of the art of the hero, 2,000 years ago, and they spread it throughout their culture, and it sank in and remained alive on this Greek island of Crete. So when the Germans arrived, they were arriving in a place that had been practicing that idea of know what to do for 2,000 years. And because they were an island and cut off from the rest of the world, most of us have moved on in our lives. We've become involved with like iPhones and technology, but the Cretans were still living the same lives in the 1940s that they've been living back in the 1440s. Nothing had changed. That's what Hitler had not counted on. He didn't realize he wasn't just going to an island. He was going back in time to the past, to a time when people knew how to respond in a crisis and knew how to rely on each other and knew how to tap into the real skills of the hero: strength, skill, and compassion. There was another guy named Georges Hebert who saw what happened on Crete, and he was just as fascinated as I was. And what he came up with was a revival of this ancient art of the hero, and he even boiled it down not to 3 words, but to just 2 words. And these are the 2 words like you take out the door with you today, and to me, it will make the difference in your own lives between knowing what to do and not having a clue. And what Georges Hebert realized was going on in Crete was every day, the people on this island, everything they did, they put it to a simple test, a simple 2-word test. And the test is this: be useful. Is what I'm doing, is it being useful? When I'm having a conversation with somebody in an argument, am I being useful, or am I just trying to win an argument? If I'm exercising, if I'm doing this, if I'm lifting weights, it's like, is it useful? It's kind of not too useful, you know? You will never do this for any reason in your life. Now, you can't even eat properly this way. So they changed the form of exercise to a way that is being useful. That was a test of the art of the hero. And where it left the Cretans was in the moment of the extreme crisis, when the entire history of the world was in balance, the Cretans knew how to respond. And I'll leave you with this final thought. The Cretan resistance, these poor civilians up in the mountains, they were so useful that after a while, they got tired of playing defense, and they said, you know what, we're taking the ball back. We're going to play a little bit of offense. What they decided to do was something else that had never been done in modern military history. Instead of just trying to fight every single German on the island, they decided, you know what, we're just going to get one of these guys. So they went behind enemy lines and kidnapped the general. They plucked this guy out, and they went on the run. That's what my book, Natural Born Heroes, is about. It's a chronicle of this bizarre adventure where these shepherds snuck behind enemy lines, get the general, and they go on the run for over a month, being pursued by 80,000 very angry German soldiers. And again, 2 unique situations in history. Only resistance captured a general and got him off the island. And I think it all came down to one thing. This is a people that never forgot that being a hero is all about being useful. Guys, thanks very much for your attention. You have a great day today. Thanks a lot.